My name is Cassidy Moore. I'm 22 years old, and on the day most people celebrate another trip around the sun, I got a text from my father that ended life as I knew it. Sold your laptop. Kayla's phone broke. Be grateful we feed you. Also, her tuition's due. $5,800. Figure it out by Friday. No happy birthday. No joke. No explanation. Just a digital punch to the gut that left me frozen in the break room of the corner griddle, with a half-drunk coffee trembling in my hands. Before I can continue my story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and the local time in the comments. I'm always curious where you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. My family always looked picture perfect. We were the Moores of Oak Ridge, Illinois, middle-class charm, matching holiday sweaters church every Sunday. My father, Greg, owned a mechanic shop. My mother, Linda, was a nurse until she retired to support us at home. And my younger sister, Kayla, well, Kayla was the golden child. The one with the sparkly Instagram feed, the cheer trophies, the easy praise. Me, I was the practical one. The fixer, the planner, the girl who worked 2 jobs and kept her head down. Even as a child, I learned to ask for less, so Kayla could shine more. That birthday morning had started like all the others. I got up early, dressed for my shift, and went downstairs where my mom was sipping coffee, scrolling through Pinterest. "Morning," she said flatly. "Happy birthday." "Thanks," I replied, pausing, waiting for something more. "Can you take Kayla to the salon later? Her appointment's at 4. No card, no cake, no mention of the dinner I'd hoped for. Just another errand like it was any other Tuesday. I didn't argue. I just tucked my MacBook, my pride and joy, into my tote. That laptop held my senior thesis, freelance projects, job applications, even saved photos from childhood. I'd spent nearly a year saving for it, waiting tables and working remote gigs. It was more than a machine. It was my independence, my future. And by noon it was gone. Sold, without my knowledge, without a trace of remorse. When the second text came in, $5,800 by Friday. Kayla's spring tuition. I had to steady myself against the brick wall behind the diner. My heart thudded loud and slow in my chest. I texted back the only 2 words I could manage. "Not happening." The response came instantly. "Then pack your things. You're out." No discussion. No, let's talk. I had refused to give what I didn't have, and that was the last straw. I made it through the rest of my shift on autopilot, nodding when customers asked for coffee refills, smiling faintly when my manager Tom gave me a small bookstore gift card because you're one of the good ones. He had no idea how much that meant. I left the diner that night knowing I couldn't go back home, not really. Not in spirit. But I did need to go back physically. I had belongings to retrieve, documents to gather, and a plan to set in motion. That was the last day I called that house my home. I didn't cry on the drive to Nina's. I didn't scream. I didn't even play music. I just gripped the steering wheel of my aging Corolla and let the quiet settle into my bones. Nina Patel had been my best friend since 8th grade, long before either of us had boyfriends or credit card debt or complicated feelings about our mothers. Her apartment was small, loud with city traffic, and smelled like cinnamon tea and lavender candles. But that night, it felt like a sanctuary. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and wordlessly pulled me into a hug. "What happened?" she asked gently. "He sold my laptop," I murmured. Then told me I had to pay Kayla's tuition. $5,000, by Friday. "Wait, what?" Her voice sharpened. "Cass, you saved up for that thing for a year. That's your whole life on there." "And it's gone," I said, sinking into her couch. I told her everything. The texts, the eviction, the nauseating way they framed it all, like I owed them, like I was ungrateful. The truth is that text didn't surprise me. Not really. It was just the moment when the pressure valve finally blew. See, I'd always been the one who held it all together. When Kayla lost her phone last year, I happily gave her my old one, even though I'd saved for months to get it. When Mom's car broke down, I volunteered my savings for the repair. When Dad's hours got cut during COVID, I picked up more shifts. Didn't blink. Didn't ask. They'd always told me I was the strong one, the helper, the one who understood family. And Kayla. She got to be the delicate one, the social butterfly. The girl who changed majors 3 times, wrecked 2 cars, and still got a brand new MacBook and spa weekends because she needed a break. I remember one Christmas I made hand-painted mugs for everyone because I couldn't afford anything else. Kayla gave out socks from the dollar store. Guess whose gifts everyone raved about? I don't even know when the resentment began. It was like mold growing beneath the surface, slow quiet spreading through everything I touched. I hadn't expected a grand birthday celebration. I'd stopped hoping for that around age 17. But I had expected to keep what little I'd earned, to not be penalized for saying no just once. At Nina's table, I began sketching out a plan. I would go home late, grab my documents, a few essentials, pack fast, quiet, clean. Nina offered to come with me, but I told her I needed to do it alone. Then she said something that changed everything. Cass don't just leave quietly, leave something they can't ignore. And just like that, the idea was born. I'd been keeping records, receipts, transfers, a little folder of just-in-case papers I started building after they drained my savings for Kayla's second semester of beauty school. They thought I didn't notice. They thought I'd never say anything. They were wrong. I parked 3 houses down, engine off, headlights dark. The Moore house looked still silent, except for the faint glow in Kayla's upstairs window. It was just past midnight, cold enough to fog the glass, and my palms were sweating as I held my house key still attached to the neon lanyard Kayla gave me in high school. I didn't know if I was more afraid of being seen or not being seen at all. The house smelled the same fabric softener, something burnt, and Mom's lavender plug-in that never quite masked the tension. I moved like a ghost past the family photos where I barely made the frame. My room was just as I'd left it, or so I thought. The door was ajar. Light spilled out into the hall, and Kayla was standing in front of my mirror, wearing my favorite black dress, the one I'd bought for job interviews. Drawers open, closet half emptied, my belongings scattered like garage sale leftovers. "What are you doing in my room?" I said, my voice low but sharp. She jumped then, casually adjusted the hem like it was a fitting room. "Oh. Hey, Dad said you're leaving, so Mom said I could take a few things. These aren't things I snapped. They're mine." "Geez, calm down. You don't need this stuff anymore. You waitress. You're not going to be like a lawyer or something." My breath caught in my throat. For a moment I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The entitlement wasn't new, but the sheer indifference that cut deep. "Where's my laptop?" I asked. "Dad sold it to Mr. Crenshaw next door. His daughter's starting college. He got $1,200 for it. I got the new iPhone and a little leftover spending money." She grinned. "Win-win, right?" I wanted to scream. Instead, I knelt and pulled my suitcase from beneath the bed, ignoring Kayla's ongoing commentary about how none of this stuff was even cute, and how I should have told her before taking off. I moved quickly, clothes, toiletries, chargers, passport notebooks, anything important or irreplaceable. Then I lifted the loose floorboard beneath my desk and retrieved the cash I'd been hiding, $3,000 in rolled bills. My secret savings, my insurance policy. They hadn't found it, yet. Kayla finally left, dress still on, taking with her a few more pieces of my identity. Alone, I reached into the back of my closet and pulled out the box I'd hidden months ago. It held bank statements, grocery receipts, printouts of Venmo transfers, even a handwritten IOU from Dad for Kayla's dental work that he'd scribbled on a napkin. I sorted the papers methodically, grouping them into categories. Bills I'd paid, loans that were never returned, unauthorized transfers, proof of my laptop purchase, including the serial number, warranty, and insurance. I printed a cover sheet at the 24-hour copy shop near the gas station. Financial summary: Cassidy Moore, 6 years of contributions and losses. And at the bottom of the final page I wrote, "This is not revenge, this is reality." By 3:30 a.m., I was back at the house. I placed the folder dead center on the kitchen table, on top of a yellow placemat shaped like a sunflower. A note clipped to the top read, "You wanted proof. Here it is. No contact until restitution." I didn't slam the door on my way out, but I left it unlocked so they could walk straight into the truth. It was still dark when I drove away. The neighborhood hushed under a thin veil of fog. As my taillights disappeared down the street, I imagined my mother stumbling into the kitchen the next morning, bleary-eyed, headed for coffee. I pictured her spotting the folder, the neatly clipped note, and that moment of pause, the second before she called my name, forgetting I was no longer upstairs. No longer hers to guilt or command. The folder I left behind was more than paper. It was my voice laid out in bullet points, timestamps, and dollar signs. Every piece of evidence was something I'd carried for years in silence. The first section detailed 6 years of unauthorized withdrawals, $6, $200 total. Little amounts at first, $50 here, $120 there, always for emergencies. Car repairs, groceries, utility bills that somehow had my name on them. I highlighted the dates, circled the explanations I'd been given in their text messages. It was all annotated like a research project. The theme: exploitation by stealth. The second section was worse: the household bills I'd covered since I turned 19. Not because I offered, but because they said I had to contribute now that you're an adult living under our roof. Rent wasn't discussed, it was expected. But I wasn't paying for a room, I was paying for the whole house. In total, $100 to $1,500 per month, over nearly 3 years. That's roughly $36,000. I printed out digital bank statements, direct deposit histories from the corner griddle, and checks I'd written out for water, gas, and electric. Every dollar accounted for. Then came the loan log, $13,450 in total, all unpaid. Money for Kayla's fender benders, braces, cheer camp fees. Mom's dental surgery. Dad's truck transmission. Not once had I been paid back, and when I asked, I was told to stop keeping score. But I had kept score. Every line item was highlighted. The fourth section hit like a gut punch, even to me, the trust fund my grandfather had set up for me when I was born. $20,000 vanished, supposedly due to market losses in 2019. But a few months ago, Aunt Rachel let it slip that Kayla's private college tuition had been handled by the family trust. I dug. Hard. What I found made my stomach flip. Transfers from my trust to the main household account. Not once, not twice, but monthly. Just enough to cover her fees, rent books, her entire academic roller coaster. While I was applying for scholarships and working 2 jobs, they were quietly siphoning my future away. And then the final section, my laptop. Receipts. AppleCare info. Warranty card. Photos of me unboxing it last year. A screen capture of its serial number registered to my name. Plus screenshots of similar models selling for $2,000. Greg Moore had sold it for $200 to a neighbor. I included a printout of the police report I'd filed that morning for theft of personal property. It didn't name my father. Yet. And right before the closing page, I inserted a signed letter from Benjamin Hale, my Aunt Rachel's lawyer, outlining the potential legal consequences of ongoing financial abuse and trust mismanagement. I knew it would rattle them. At the very end was an invoice. Total claim for reimbursement, 56 $6,950. Below it, legal action will proceed if not addressed. This is not a threat, it's accountability. By the time I pulled back into Nina's driveway, it was nearly 4:30 a.m. I didn't speak. Just climbed into the pull-out sofa she'd made up for me, with soft flannel sheets and lavender spray. I stared at the ceiling for a while, my heartbeat slowing, the adrenaline draining. I didn't feel triumphant, I felt hollow, exhausted. But for the first time in years, I also felt untouchable. I woke 3 hours later, to the sound of my phone buzzing like a trapped bee on the nightstand. The screen lit up like fireworks. 32 missed calls, 51 unread messages, and a dozen voicemail alerts. My hands shook as I reached for it, already bracing for the impact. The first text was from Kayla. "What did you do? Mom's crying. Dad's flipping out. They're saying you're suing them." The next dozen came rapid fire. Greg's were explosive. "You ungrateful brat. After everything we've done for you, you want to embarrass us like this. This is a betrayal, Cassidy. You're dead to me." Then they turned, panicked. "We need to talk. You're overreacting. We can explain everything. Come home, please. This doesn't have to get ugly." It already was ugly. It had been ugly for years, they just hadn't been the ones forced to look at it. My mother's voicemail started loud shouting about "how dare you," and "you're blowing this out of proportion." But in the last 2, her voice cracked. That surprised me more than the rage. "Cassidy, sweetheart, please call us. There are reasons for everything. Things you don't understand. Your father is not well. Please don't do this." But I had done it, and I wasn't undoing it. Still, I hesitated. The weight of it all, the disruption, the chaos pressed into my chest like a cinder block. What if I was wrong? What if I'd overstepped? Guilt is a funny thing. It doesn't care about facts. It only knows how to whisper in the voice of your parents. Then I saw the voicemail from Grandma Eleanor. She rarely got involved in family arguments. She was the matriarch, the one who always said, "Stay out of it," or "family is complicated." So seeing her name jolted something in me. "Cassidy, it's Grandma. I just spoke to your father. I don't have the words. I want you to know I'm flying in tomorrow. Your Aunt Rachel will pick me up. We need to speak in person, sweetheart. Do not go back to that house. We'll sort this out properly. I love you." That was when the guilt cracked. Grandma Eleanor didn't overreact. She didn't take sides, and she never ever raised her voice. Nina walked in with coffee still in her pajamas, dark hair piled in a bun. "You okay?" she asked, setting the mug beside me. I shook my head and showed her the messages. She didn't say anything, just read. Then looked at me and said, "Good, let them panic." The thing about power, you don't always realize how much you've given away until you feel it rushing back in. That day, I turned off my phone again. I emailed my professor, explained I'd be out for a couple of days due to a family emergency. I called the corner griddle and asked Tom if I could push my Friday shift to Sunday. "Take what you need," he said. "We've got your back." I spent the rest of the afternoon sorting through my documents again, making sure nothing had been missed. Nina helped me set up a password-protected cloud drive just in case anything happened to my hard copies. Then I sat in the silence and waited for Grandma to land. The storm had broken, but the real reckoning hadn't even begun. Grandma Eleanor arrived with Aunt Rachel just after noon the next day. Rachel rang the buzzer, and when I opened the door to Nina's apartment there, they were two women who had shaped my childhood in completely different ways. Rachel, my father's older sister, with her steel gray bob and bookstore owner calm, and Eleanor Rizale in her trenchcoat eyes sharp beneath her tinted glasses. I hadn't seen her in nearly a year, but she hugged me like she'd never let go. "Cassidy, darling," she said into my hair, "you've held this family together for too long. It's time someone held them accountable." We sat at Nina's kitchen table, where Eleanor removed a folder from her leather bag and slid it across to me. There was something deeply symbolic about that, a folder for a folder. Mine had been evidence. Hers was revelation. "This is your trust," she said, tapping the cover. "Set up by your grandfather when you were born. Equal funds for you and Kayla. Intended for education and early adulthood transitions." My breath hitched. But I was told the money was gone, lost in market crashes. Eleanor's expression didn't change. "That's what your father told the trustees, yes. He claimed you were irresponsible and had no future plans. He petitioned to transfer oversight to himself, citing parental discretion. The board allowed it under pressure. Your mother co-signed. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. Every sleepless night I'd worked, every late shift, every scholarship application, all of it had been unnecessary, or worse, stolen. Kayla's trust, Eleanor continued, was nearly depleted within her first year at Madison Valley. After that, they began pulling from yours quietly, just enough each month to stay under the audit threshold. I opened the documents with trembling hands. There it was in black and white, the original account balance, the disbursements, the notes in my father's handwriting requesting exceptions. All approved, all signed. Aunt Rachel leaned in. I suspected something was off when Greg bought that second car for Kayla after her fender bender. He said business was slow, but he was flashing cash around. When I asked him about your fund, he got cagey. Eleanor's voice softened. "Cassidy, I'm sorry. I trusted Greg to do the right thing. I didn't realize he saw your work ethic as a free pass to exploit you." I stared down at the table, the numbers swimming. "So, what happens now?" Eleanor placed her hand over mine. "You're getting it back. Every penny. We've already contacted Benjamin Hale. He's filing a motion to remove Greg as trustee immediately and initiate a full audit. The funds will be secured under new management, Rachel and I." It felt surreal, like watching a courtroom drama from inside the screen. Only this wasn't fiction. This was my life. My stolen future slowly returning. I asked the question that had been lodged in my throat since the day I moved out. "Did Kayla know?" Rachel and Eleanor exchanged a glance. "She didn't," Eleanor said finally, "but she's beginning to ask questions. I think she's starting to see the cracks." We sat in silence after that. I felt like I had been living in someone else's narrative, one where I was the footnote to someone else's headline. But now the ink was finally drying on my own story. That evening, Eleanor gave me a key to her guest apartment above the garage downtown. "It's yours rent-controlled," she said. "Not a gift, just a bridge. You've earned every square inch." I moved in the next morning. My parents had taken my laptop, my labor, and my trust. But they hadn't taken my name. And now, I was reclaiming every piece of it. 3 days after I moved into Grandma's guest apartment, the doorbell rang just before sunset. I wasn't expecting anyone. Nina had class, and Eleanor always called ahead. I peeked through the peephole and nearly dropped my tea. "Kayla!" She stood there in leggings and a puffer coat, a pink hoodie pulled tight around her face. Her hands were jammed deep into the pockets, and her body swayed like she was working up the courage to knock a second time. I opened the door slowly. "Hey," she said, barely above a whisper. "Can we talk?" It took everything in me not to slam the door. But something in her expression, uncertainty, maybe even shame, held me there. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. We sat across from each other in the small living room, a candle flickering between us on the coffee table. Kayla stared at her hands. "I didn't know," she said finally, "any of it. About the money, about what you were paying. They always said you were the responsible one, that you offered to help." I let the silence hang there, waiting to see if she meant it. "They told me the laptop was a gift," she continued. "A reward for my midterms. They said it was no big deal that you'd given it up willingly. And the tuition, I thought Grandma was paying that." She looked up, eyes rimmed red. "They lied to me too." I didn't rush to comfort her. For years she'd taken my things, my space, my silence, but maybe she hadn't known the cost. Not truly. "You believed I was just giving everything up for fun?" I asked, voice flat. "I believed what they told me," she said, eyes glistening. "That you were a machine, that you didn't need anything." It hit me hard, the realization that our parents hadn't just manipulated me. They had crafted separate realities for both of us. I'd been cast as the capable one who didn't need care. She'd been made the dependent one who couldn't function without help. Neither of us had been seen fully. Neither of us had been loved without conditions. Kayla reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "It's $800, she said, pushing it across the table. "What the phone cost? I've been working extra hours at the campus bookstore. It's not much, but it's a start." I stared at it. My first instinct was to push it back. What's $800 compared to the tens of thousands they'd siphoned from me? But this wasn't about math. It was about acknowledgement. And for the first time in our lives, Kayla was offering that without being asked. "Why now?" I asked. She took a breath. "Because I finally started asking questions. I went into Mom's room and found copies of your folder. They were hiding it under a pile of magazines. I read everything. Then I talked to Grandma. She told me the truth." She paused, then looked at me with something like humility. "I want to apply to the early education program at Lakeside. For real this time. Not because they told me to, because I actually want to, and I want to pay my way. Grandma's helping, but I want to make it right with you, too." I looked at my sister, and for the first time in years saw her as her own person, not a mirror of my failure or a reflection of our parents' favoritism. Just Kayla, figuring things out. "I'm not ready to forgive," I said softly, "but I'm willing to start over." She nodded. "That's fair." And for the first time in our entire lives, we sat in the same room without competition, resentment, or noise. Just two sisters, beginning again. I should have known they wouldn't stay quiet for long. 2 days after Kayla's visit, I was at Aunt Rachel's house reviewing court documents with Benjamin Hale. The emergency hearing to remove my father as trustee was set for the following week. It was all moving faster than I'd expected. But justice, once finally in motion, rarely strolls. We were deep into paperwork when the doorbell rang 3 sharp knocks that didn't wait for an answer. Rachel peeked through the side window. Her face tightened. "It's them," she said. "Your parents." I stood slowly. I wasn't sure whether to run or brace myself. My stomach twisted with the kind of nausea you get right before public speaking, or a car crash. "Let me handle it," Rachel said, walking toward the door. But before she could get there, Greg's voice roared through the wooden frame. "Cassidy, get out here right now. You don't get to hide behind lawyers and paperwork." Linda's voice was right behind his, shrill and cracking. "Cassidy, please. We can talk about this." As a family, don't destroy us over a misunderstanding. I stood rooted to the hardwood floor, hands cold and clammy. Do you want to call the police? Rachel asked. I didn't even hesitate. Yes. She pulled out her phone and dialed. Calm. Efficient. A woman who had been through worse and lived to file affidavits about it. From the front steps, Greg bellowed something about betrayal and public shame. He called Benjamin a parasite, accused Rachel of manipulating me. I heard Linda sobbing in that strange performative way she used whenever she wanted to reset the emotional scoreboard, like crying gave her moral high ground. I glanced at Benjamin. He was unfazed. This isn't unusual, he said simply. The guilty often yell the loudest. The police arrived within 10 minutes. 2 officers, one older one, young enough to look stunned by the drama unfolding on a quiet suburban street. Rachel stepped out with them and calmly explained the situation, an uninvited visit by individuals currently under review for financial misconduct. Greg tried to argue, tried to spin it. I'm her father. I'm just trying to talk to my daughter. But the officers were unmoved. They issued a trespass warning and made it clear return, and they'd be escorted to the station. Greg's face was red, jaw clenched. Linda sobbed into her scarf. They left without another word. As they backed out of the driveway, a black sedan pulled in behind them. A man in a tailored navy suit stepped out carrying a slim briefcase. Benjamin nodded at him. Right on time. Mr. Moore, the man said, addressing me. My name is Carl Donahue. I'm with the Trust Oversight Board. I'm here to deliver official notification of next week's hearing. You are formally requested to attend, as is your father. He handed me the envelope like it was a bomb made of legalese. This hearing will determine not only the future of the trust, Carl added, but potential civil penalties for any breach of fiduciary responsibility. It was happening. The lies, the gaslighting, the theft. All of it was about to be laid bare. I turned back to the house envelope in hand. Inside, Aunt Rachel had already poured tea. Benjamin was reviewing strategy. And for the first time since this all began, I didn't feel like a runaway. I felt like someone who'd finally come home to the truth. The morning of the hearing was overcast, one of those Illinois skies that looks like it might open up and cry with you. I stood outside the courthouse in a navy blazer Nina had lent me, my fingers ice cold despite the coffee cup in my hand. Inside that building, the story I'd spent a lifetime living quietly was about to become very, very loud. The courtroom was modest wood paneling, squeaky chairs, a flickering exit sign. But to me, it felt like a stage. On one side sat Benjamin, Rachel, and me. On the other, my father stiff in a suit that didn't quite hide the defiance in his posture, and my mother wringing tissues in her lap like they were apology notes. Kayla didn't come. I didn't expect her to. She was attending orientation at Lakeside State's early education program, a beginning of her own. The judge, an older woman with tired eyes and a crisp voice, listened carefully as Benjamin presented evidence, financial records, trust fund statements, proof of misappropriation, the police report about the laptop, even my spreadsheet of household contributions. Ms. Moore, the judge said, peering at me over her glasses. Do you have anything you'd like to say for the record? I stood, knees shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of everything I'd carried. I didn't want this, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. All I ever wanted was to be treated with respect. I worked, I contributed, I supported my family. And when I said no, just once, I was thrown out and punished. I paused, heart pounding. This isn't about revenge. It's about being seen, heard, counted. Greg scoffed loud enough to echo. The judge glared. Mr. Moore, you will remain silent, Benjamin continued. He brought up the clause in the trust contract about fiduciary responsibility. He showed how funds were rerouted to accounts in my father's name. He pointed out the absence of records justifying those transfers. My father's face reddened deeper with each click of the projector. Then the judge spoke again. Based on the documentation and testimony provided, the court finds that Mr. Moore has breached his duties as trustee of both Cassidy and Kayla Moore's trust accounts. He is hereby removed as trustee effective immediately. Control is transferred to Eleanor Whitman and Rachel Whitman under board supervision. Furthermore, the matter of civil liability for damages remains open pending further review. I didn't cry, but I felt it, a quiet release, like a door inside me finally unlocking. As we left the courtroom, reporters swarmed the steps. Local news had picked up whispers of financial misconduct within a prominent family. I hadn't planned to speak, but when a young journalist called out, "Ms. Moore, do you have anything to say to other young people who've gone through similar experiences?" I turned, looked straight into the camera, and answered, "Yes. You're not crazy, you're not selfish, and you're allowed to stop shrinking to make others feel big." That clip went semi-viral, not millions of views, but enough. Enough for other girls like me, quiet, steady, taken for granted, to hear something familiar. In the days that followed, extended relatives reached out. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Great uncles who suddenly remembered what I'd endured. They apologized. They rallied. Some even offered support. My father silent. Still angry, still stubborn. My mother left a voicemail, said she missed me, said family shouldn't go to court. But family had gone to court. And I hadn't flinched. I'd stood up, finally. A year to the day after Greg's text upended everything, I stood in my own kitchen, sunlight streaming through the window, a pan of blueberry muffins cooling on the counter. The air smelled like cinnamon and possibility. My birthday this year, quiet. Intentional. Mine. The apartment Grandma gave me, the one above her old garage, had become more than a stopgap. It was home. I'd painted the walls a soft sage green, added thrifted art, a tiny bookshelf, and a well-worn reading chair by the window. Every inch reflected a version of myself I was finally getting to know, self-sufficient, yes, but also soft, curious, at peace. I'd graduated from Lakeside State in December with honors. My thesis recovered from cloud backup thanks to a friend of Nina's earned department recognition. And that marketing assistant job I interviewed for, it turned into a full-time role at Tanner & Rowe Creative, a small firm downtown where I finally felt seen. They valued my ideas, my resilience, even gave me a raise after 3 months. And Ethan, the neighbor, who lived across the hall and offered to carry boxes on my move-in day. Let's just say what began as shared pizza nights turned into something slower, steadier, and more real than I ever imagined. No games, no keeping score. Just laughter, thoughtful silences, and space to grow. Kayla and I, surprisingly, talk often. She's in her second semester now, thriving in her child development classes. We text about lesson plans, share memes, and even FaceTime on bad days. Last month, she mailed me a handmade birthday card along with a check for $6,000. "It's the tuition Dad tried to pin on you," her note read. "This doesn't make up for everything. But I needed you to know I see it now. I see you now." I kept the check but never cashed it. It's in a frame in my room, a reminder that healing isn't linear, but it is possible. As for Greg and Linda, they've stayed quiet. There was an official settlement restitution, required counseling, recommended legal oversight put in place. Greg never apologized, never even admitted wrongdoing. He still tells anyone who'll listen that I blew things out of proportion, but the thing is, I don't need his apology anymore. Eleanor remains a force in my life. She calls every Sunday, brings over soup when I'm sick, and just last month handed me a deed to a piece of land in the Wisconsin Dells. "Your grandfather always wanted you to have this," she told me. "A place of your own to retreat, create rest." I haven't been yet, but someday I will. Last night, we had a small dinner at my place. Nina, Aunt Rachel, Kayla, Ethan, Grandma. I made spaghetti, the table crowded with mismatched chairs and secondhand dishes. We laughed until the candles melted down and the wine ran out. And when it came time for cake, they lit 23 candles. I closed my eyes, drew in a breath, and smiled. "Make a wish," Nina said. But the truth is, I didn't need to. I already had what I never knew I was missing. Sometimes the hardest part of standing up for yourself is believing you're worth the trouble. For years, I thought being the responsible one meant staying quiet, carrying the weight, and never asking for anything in return. But the truth is, sacrifice without boundaries isn't love, it's erasure. 1 year later, I'm not just surviving, I'm living a life I chose. I'm surrounded by people who see me, not just what I can give them. And if you're out there wondering whether it's too late to start over, I promise you it's not. Now tell me, have you ever had to set a boundary with family or walk away from something that was breaking you down? Share your story in the comments. I read everyone. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who might need it. Because healing isn't loud, but it is powerful, and it's never too late to reclaim your story.